Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Some massive news coming out of the LSU football program earlier today as Brian Kelly announces that there's going to be a complete overhaul of the defensive coaching staff heading into that 2024 year, including Matt House, the defensive coordinator, departing from the program. And this suddenly opens up what is, in my mind, one of the more attractive defensive coordinator positions in all of the country. With the amount of talent that you can recruit at LSU, with the being on the opposite end of an offense that is going to be one of the better offenses that you see in the country, this is a very attractive job. And for LSU fans, this was a move that needed to be made. And if you're an LSU fan, you're extremely excited about the future because you look at that offense with what Nuss showed you in the bowl game, with the offensive line and the pass catchers, a potential commitment from five-star quarterback Bryce Underwood in the next couple of days. This offense for the next couple of years is going to continue to be one of the better offenses that we see in the country. Now, the next step to getting LSU to compete for a national championship, to win an SEC title, is shoring up that defense. And I get the LSU personnel on the defensive side of the ball. One, it went through a lot of injuries. It wasn't where it needed to be. And we have a transfer portal wish list for LSU that's coming out in the next couple of days. But more importantly, the schematics and the lack of discipline from that LSU defense, that is what needed to change. That falls right on the defensive coordinator's lap. So although that personnel wasn't where it needed to be, the schematics and the undiscipline and the poor tackling of this LSU defense, it needed to get fixed. And Brian Kelly, I think, made a tough move, but the right decision, separating from Matt House and opening this up to go and get the right guy to run this LSU defense heading into 2024. I want to talk about some top targets that I think would be great fits for this LSU program. Now, before we get into it, just want to say thank you to you guys. The amount of support you guys have shown, it's been a wild last couple of weeks of college football, transfer portal, coaching carousel. Cannot thank you guys enough. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And more importantly, would love to hear from you guys in the comment section, your top targets for LSU's defensive coordinator position. And without further ado, let's get into this one. And the first name that I want to talk about that I think would be a phenomenal fit for LSU is defensive coordinator from Miami, Lance Guidry. And the reason I think Lance Guidry is such a good fit for the LSU Tigers is two things. One, Lance Guidry is a phenomenal defensive coordinator. You look at what he did at Marshall before getting to Miami, and you look what he did at Miami with a defense that had a lot of young talent starting and kind of a lot of inexperience and a lot of moving parts at that Miami Hurricanes program. Lance Guidry did a phenomenal job. And you take a look at that secondary, most importantly, the biggest aspect of LSU that needs to get cleaned up, only allowing a 56% completion percentage to opposing quarterbacks. That was top 18 in the country. And that was something that LSU struggled massively, not only the completion percentage, but giving up the big plays. Lance Guidry brings a defense that is going to shore up that back end. And then you take a look at what he does in the run game, only allowing 3.5 yards per carry to opposing running backs. That was top 20 in the country too. Lance Guidry wants to be aggressive. He wants to send pressure. He wants to develop those guys on the outside so they can hold up on islands. And you look at the track record for Lance Guidry, kind of checks all the boxes that LSU's looking for as their defensive coordinator. And I think just as important of Lance Guidry being a phenomenal defensive coordinator is the experience he has in the state of Louisiana, right? Born and raised in Louisiana, spent a ton of time coaching at the high school and college level in that state. We talk about this a lot, and something super important to LSU is dominating the state of Louisiana on the recruiting trail. And we talk about when LSU is at its peak and it's playing its best football, all the best players from high school in the state of Louisiana go to LSU. And Lance Guidry is a guy that would allow LSU to thrive in state. You're already seeing Brian Kelly kind of lock the borders up, especially with the five-star defensive lineman Dominic McKinley flipping his commitment to LSU on New Year's Eve night. Lance Guidry is going to continue to allow that to happen. And the questions that you had with Brian Kelly, can he recruit down south? Can he recruit the state of Louisiana? Lance Guidry certainly going to help that. I think Lance Guidry would make a ton of sense for LSU. The next guy I want to talk about, and a coordinator that has done a phenomenal job at the Missouri Tigers, is Blake Baker. And many LSU fans know, obviously, he has coached the linebackers at LSU in 2021. And two things I really like about Blake Baker. One, obviously, as a defensive coordinator, has done a phenomenal job at Missouri, took over a Missouri defense that was outside the top 100 in scoring defense, and you take a look at what he did in 2023, only allowing 21.8 points per game, 28th in the country, a massive overhaul on the field, has done a great job in that secondary. Multiple guys will be going to the NFL from that Missouri secondary. But more important than just on-field performance for Blake Baker, I think he has done a really good job evaluating talent out of high school. And at Missouri, you don't necessarily have the recruiting chops that LSU does in terms of having that pull of all that 5- and 4-star talent. Although Blake Baker has done a phenomenal job on the recruiting trail, landing guys like Williams Winery in that 2024 class. He's a good recruiter. Excuse me, but more importantly, I think he's a phenomenal evaluator. And you take a look at some of this young talent on this Missouri defense, guys that kind of flew under the radar out of high school are all of a sudden developing into really good football players for the Missouri Tigers. And when you're a defensive coordinator, not only do you need to be able to recruit that premium talent, but you also have to be a really good evaluator of talent and what guys are going to fit our system and our scheme and what we want to do on the defensive side of the football. And I don't think there's been a better example of that than Blake Baker. And again, he's going up against SEC offenses that are out recruiting him, right? The Missouri has not brought in the talent that other SEC programs have on the offensive side of the football. And you look at Missouri's defense, and they've been absolutely nails against a lot of really good offenses that are really talented. So the combination of Blake Baker being a really good schematics coach, but also being a very good evaluator and player developer, I think kind of checks those boxes that you want in a very good defensive coordinator. Now, the last guy I want to talk about here is Scott Simons coming over from SMU. And this is one of my, I think not just mine, but a lot of college football fans. And if you follow some young coaches on the recruiting trail and what they're doing, I think he's one of the more up and coming coaches, right? Young coach, has taken over this SMU defense. And you take a look at what they did last year on the defensive side of the football. I mean, really a brilliant performance. Top 20 in the country, only allowing 19.2 points per game, 4.5 yards per play allowed. That was number 7. Only 6.1 yards per pass, number 7 in the country. 9.6% sack rate. That was number 5 in the country. What Scott Simons brings is not only a ton of young energy into this program, but a guy that has that aggressive nature. And you look at LSU's front 7 and the talent that they're acquiring on the defensive line, you want that to be utilized. You want to be an aggressive defense that is kind of smothering your opponents. And that is exactly what Scott Simons wants to do. He's not one of those bend but don't break. We're going to try to hold you to 3 in the red zone. He wants to get after it, create negative plays, create turnovers. And at SMU has done a phenomenal job. And you talk about young up and coming coaches. I think he's one of the best in the business. And again, going back to the take on LSU to start this one out, this is an LSU program that this is a very attractive defensive coordinator job. This is one of the biggest programs in the entire country. You carry a big stick in this hire. You can go out and get a lot of guys. It's kind of, you got the pick of the litter. This is the best defensive coordinator position that is open right now. Make it happen. Go get one of the top up-and-coming defensive coaches in the country, because you look at the future of this LSU program, it's extremely bright if they could figure out this defensive side of the football. Now, in the next couple of days, we'll be talking about LSU, some top targets in the transfer portal I would like to see them get. But when you start marrying a really, really good coaching staff with some really good talent, that's what you need on the defensive side of the football. Looks like LSU trending that way. Really exciting time for an LSU Tiger fan. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.